The next thing that Kephart would recommend would be a heavy-duty pair. Hello, welcome to WayPoint Survival. Today, I want to talk to you about Horace Kephart's winter clothing and footwear. Stay tuned. In the last few videos, we've shown you the shelter, the sleep system, the fire tools and setup, but all of that only works properly if the man inside the camp is dressed right. Horace Kephart spent a lot of time writing about winter clothes, and what's interesting is how little of it looks like modern cold weather gear. It was almost entirely wool, was layered carefully, and chosen for travel on foot. In this video, I plan to break down exactly what Kephart wore in the winter, why he favored wool over fur or cotton, and how his clothing system worked together to keep him warm without modern materials. And so if you want to know more about Horace Kephart and how he dressed for cold weather, stay tuned. Now before we go any farther, I just want to make a statement. I was accused in the last video of using AI for filming, and I'm not. This is me out here in the backcountry getting snowed on. I'm really out here. I've got an umbrella over the camera, and we're just doing the best we can with what we have, and we're getting, I don't know, 3 or 4 more inches of snow. So it's beautiful, and we're just going to film what we've got. We got snow all over everything, but that's all right. So Horace Kephart, although he was well aware of what the mountain men did, and if you read documents from that era, books and stories, you'll hear that they wore a lot of bear skins and buffalo robes and all of that stuff. And of course they did, but they're heavy. And often if you're riding a horse, or if you've got a wagon or a buggy or a sleigh or something like that, it's not really a problem to carry a lot of things with you. But Horace Kephart did most of his trekking on foot. Not that he didn't canoe, not that he didn't ride in cars and all of that. Remember, he passed in 1931 in a tragic car accident. But he was really big on wool. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm allergic to wool. Well, if you do a little research, you'll find out that only about 3% or so of people are actually allergic to wool. The problem is, because of the rough fibers, there's little hooks on the fiber of wool, and it really is itchy, and it scratches your skin, and it makes you feel like you're having an allergic reaction. But the truth of it is, something like 97% of people aren't actually allergic to wool, it's just uncomfortable. Now, if you're uncomfortable with regular wool, I would encourage you to look up merino wool. Merino wool is as soft as cotton. Matter of fact, it's even softer, and I prefer it, and it's a modern type wool that's been bred. I believe it's from Australia, and I have several merino wool garments, and they're fabulous. Absolutely soft next to the skin, and really it's your torso, so waist to neck, that you really have to be concerned about. That's the itchiest. Wool doesn't seem to bother so much on the legs and the feet, so I don't worry too much about that. But certainly for the upper layers, I prefer to use merino, and if not, I just tough it out and wear the itchy wool next to my skin. So even though Horace Kephart hunted bears, and the people that were with him hunted there in the Appalachian Mountains, he had access to bear skins, of course. But by his time, it made a lot more sense to have wool and carry a sleeping bag, or a sleeping robe as they would often call it back then. It made a lot more sense to him than trying to drag around a great big heavy bear skin. All right, so the first item that we come to over here is a wool undershirt, and you want to, if possible, try to get a hold of 100% wool, and long sleeve, of course, and make sure that it's long enough that it can tuck down inside of your pants. Again, the more wool that you have, the closer you can get to 100%, the better it's going to keep you warm. There's a big difference between 80% wool and 100% wool, so keep that in mind. You need a wool undershirt. Second, of course, a pair of wool underpants. And yes, they did have elastic. Elastic was invented way back in the 1800s, and so by the time Horace Kephart came around, it was pretty ubiquitous. So you definitely had wool, and you can see here, it says right on the label, it's all wool. And you would wear these underneath. And what's nice about this, of course, is you're dressed in layers. It will allow you to take this off. You could pull aside, and if you got too hot, you could always take off your undergarments, and then you'd be much cooler. But it would also help in really cold weather to trap all of that heat between those layers, and you would stay much warmer. Next, 100% wool shirt. And these are fantastic shirts. And some of these things are antiques, so they're hard to find anymore. But this you can get from my friend Nathaniel Logston. See right there, Logston and Company. Now, you have to get them large. This is actually an extra large. And I don't normally wear an extra large, but because I'm wearing an undershirt and because I don't want it to be too tight, it's important that it has plenty of room that you can move around in and also trap more air. So make sure and get a good wool shirt, and he has several different colors. And of course, Kephart preferred either a tan or a dun color or a gray. It's very easy to stay a little more concealed, and it also doesn't show dirt as bad when you're in the backcountry. Next item of clothing, very important, you need a heavy pair of wool pants. Now these happen to be made by Filson. They're not cheap. I did get a good deal on these at a second-hand store, and you'll need a good pair of button-on suspenders. And then I also like to wear a belt. It's not because I don't trust the suspenders, but because I like to carry things on my belt, such as a knife or anything like that, sometimes a hatchet, and Kephart did the same thing. But this is a very, very heavy, if you'll notice, felted wool. And this will keep you very warm, and even when it's wet, and it will shed water for quite a while. So it even helps to keep you dry in various conditions. And then they would often also roll up the pants legs, just like I've done right here, and that would also keep them from getting wet and frayed and keep you out of the snow when you're walking around. The next thing that Kephart would recommend would be a heavy-duty pair of wool socks. And I got a lot of snow on them here, but these are super thick. These are just extremely warm, and you would wear these either inside your boots or perhaps to sleep in. And you can see here that they are really, really thick. Give you an idea how thick they are. And yeah, you can find these. I found these on eBay, but you just got to keep looking and searching. But you want to have some heavy-duty wool socks to keep your feet as warm as possible. And when you have 100% wool socks, they'll keep your feet warm even when they're soaking wet. So wool holds in something like 80% of your body heat when it's completely wet. Works really well. I've tried it. When I was doing my 1790 series, I was literally wearing heavy-duty wool socks and just moccasins walking around in the snow. And even though the moccasins got wet and it was cold, my feet stayed warm. So wool socks, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about footwear. Now you saw in the previous shot that I'm wearing the high duck boots, and those were very common in the 1920s and 30s, and of course on up, and you can still buy them today. But ever since rubber was invented, it's an idea to make the bottom rubber and then have the shank made of leather, and of course they're kind of ubiquitous again in the hunting world ever since then. But Horace Kephart, as you know, he liked to wear like a boot, and like an ankle-high ankle boot they were called. And so we have those here, and I've got them here. You can see I've been wearing them in the videos. But what we've done, and we've talked about this, is Horace Kephart recommended having a set of rubber overshoes. You can see that. These just stretch over the top. You can see here. And if the snow wasn't bad, or if it was just wet or perhaps muddy, you would carry these in your pack, and that would just go over your regular shoes. So again, in the Appalachian Mountains, they don't always get a whole lot of snow, and so something like this would be okay for just small snowstorms and just regularly keeping your feet generally dry. Now another thing that Kephart spoke about was having some elkskin moccasins that you could wear around camp, or perhaps if the snow got really deep for hunting, things like that, something you could put inside your pack and then slip on if you needed another pair of footwear, etc. Now these are not elkskin, but these are made from, I think, moose hide perhaps, but these are also called larrigans, and they are hunting moccasins. As you can see, completely smooth on the bottom, and these would help keep your feet really warm. Now, it's also important that you treat these, and you can still buy to this day Hubbard's shoe grease. You can get this off Amazon, and I'll try to remember and put a link down below in case you want to buy this, but this works really, really well if you want to keep your boots nice and supple. And then after you put that on there, you stick it in your oven on a tray, and you, about a half an hour or so at 175 degrees, and it helps it soak in. You can also use a hair dryer or something like that on it. But these, again, something he recommended, and you can see here that they are fully gusseted. So the tongue goes all the way up to the top. So that gives you pretty good weighting for snow and things like that. So you would definitely want this, and you would keep these treated and keep these with you at all times so that if you needed to slip them on and it got too deep, you would have this. But this is something that he recommended. Now, one other thing, inside of the hunting moccasins, you would have something that would help keep your feet warm and insulated from the ground. It would be something like this. It's leather, and it has sheepskin sewed to the top of it. And so what that does is that allows you to have some insulation from the ice and the snow on the ground. And especially if you're sitting around in a hunting stand trying to keep your feet dry as much as possible, you definitely want to have those inside of your boot. Next, we have a heavy pair of woolen mittens. And these are held together by a blanket pin. Blanket pin serves a couple of purposes, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Not only does it keep these together, allows us to hang them off of something, hang them off a packer perhaps while we're traveling, or hang them close to the fire if they get damp, but you definitely want some heavy mittens to take along with you. And then you also want to have a good wool, not a hoodie, but this is an Arctic style hand-woven 100% wool pullover, sort of like a balaclava. So this is what it would look like when it was on, and then you could put your hat back over top of it, and again the extra down here go under your collar, under your scarf as it were. Great big help to have that so you would stay a little bit warmer and keep something for your ears. But this would be a very important thing to have, that Kephart would recommend. Naturally, it would be important to have a 100% wool scarf, and this would serve many, many purposes. Again, you can use this to put around extra face covering if you need it, if it got really cold. So you could do something like that, tie it up. Just scarf has, 101 uses, very, very important. And then a wool coat. And some of you have been asking about this. Now, this is not from the 1930s, unfortunately. This is from the 1950s or so. Give you an idea what that looks like. It is made from, or it's actually sold by Sears. But this coat is exactly the same type of style that Kephart would have worn, and men of that era. It is wool, and you could tell this is kind of a classic, the way that it's cut and designed with the collar, and it does have large flap pockets right here, and that way you can put your stuff in there and close the flap over top of it, keeps the snow and dirt and debris out. So that's nice, and doesn't have any inner pockets. There wasn't any place for your cell phone back then. So this is what it would wear on the outside. Now, there's one other thing. Kephart also recommended a wool blanket. Now, he would sleep with it. You might have 2 wool blankets. If it got really cold, you'd have 3 wool blankets. And remember that thin wool blankets are better than one thick one, so because you're trapping layers of air. But what you would do with this is you could take this, if it got super cold, and you could put this around you as a match cloak. Come over like this. You could even come over your head, bring it in like this. Then you would use that safety pin that I told you about, and you would fasten it right here. And that would give you extra protection against the cold. And then you could throw it back over your shoulders, whatever you wanted, depending on, the weather and all that. And again, you would pin it right in here. So very versatile. Absolutely have to have some sort of a wool blanket. And Kephart, of course, was really big on that. And the reason why he liked wool, the reason why we like wool today, as I've said before, is it's so versatile. It keeps you warm. And it's a fabric that, as it were, that God made, and it's not some man-made substance, and it doesn't melt when you get close to a fire. It does get holes burned in it, but you can roll it right next to a fire and stay warm, and it holds your body heat in when it's wet. The only thing is it is heavy when it's wet, and it, of course, is very itchy. But other than that, wool You can exactly see why Horace Kephart recommended it and why he liked it. And so there you go. There's a rundown of what Horace Kephart would have recommended, what he actually wore and used. And I'm wearing, again, another outfit. I had to put on one to wear, and then I didn't want to stand out here in the snow and undress in front of you. But again, I'm wearing wool, and then we've got the wool out here on the table behind me of the things that he actually carried. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, another foray into the past as we do our best to investigate and to rediscover the tips, tricks, and techniques of some of the great woodsmen of the past, such as Horace Kephart, and I appreciate you watching. This is James Bender for WayPoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll find the link for the WayPoint Survival digital class. This is where you can train in the comfort and convenience of your own backyard the top 20 skills that we consider to be the most important from our Phase 1 Survival and Bushcraft class. You'll also find the link where you can sign up for the WayPoint Survival and Prepping 101 digital newsletter. It's absolutely full of great ideas. You're going to want to print it out and keep it. A lot of great stuff for future reference, and it's absolutely free. You'll also find the link for waypointsurvival.com. This is where you can sign up to take in-person classes at our beautiful training facility here in Southern Ohio, and the classes start in April like they do every year, so make sure and check that out. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.